Hello, my fellow readers. This is Dark Symphony 777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of the world, so please respect that. Right now, I am continuing to make my way through the Luniverse. I got this collection of 10 stories. Yeah, Luniverse is really, really long. It's just long. If you saw like the last group of videos, that's like 9 stories. I have 10 more, and I'm still not done with season 1. No, after this, I'd be like halfway through. So I still got another 90, several bunch of stories left. Oh boy. Oh boy. But the story I am reviewing today is Boast Busted. This is the original first story. The story that started all the role reversal story based on season 1, episode 6 of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, Boast Busters. So basically, the premise of this idea is simple. What would happen if Twilight and Trixie switched the roles? That is it. That's the premise. Not the plot, but the premise. So the plot actually starts with Trixie training for her magic show for this Eventide festival, the time where day and night they're separate. They have the same amount of hours of the day. Alright, that's fine. Trixie is trying to set up a magic show. She's getting... she has Lyra as like a test audience to test her tricks on. Lyra's like, no, I don't want to. No, please don't let me. Please don't make me. Not after what happened when you turned me into a human. That never happened. It did. I will never forget it. And so basically, Trixie gets a little help from Dinky when the actual show comes of the Eventide Festival. And so what happens is Trixie does the show. She notices before the show is fully set up, a lavender unicorn wanders into town carrying a gigantic wagon. All right, that's nothing bad. So she starts the show. She has Dinky helping her as her plant, as a magician should be. Sometimes you need a plant for the audience to help you out, and Dinky. I just woke up. Sorry about that. And Dinky really likes helping. However, Twilight interrupts the show, declaring that it's not magic. Trixie is upfront about this. She does the whole Trixie thing. Are there any naysayers? And everyone just starts glaring at Twilight. It's like, and she kind of like shies. So Trixie does the big ending where she makes Dinky disappear. She sets up a big illusion where she rescues Dinky from a alternate dimension, otherwise known as Under the Sage. And then they end the show. Everyone likes it. Everyone goes home happy, except for Twilight, who basically doesn't like how Trixie does things. So I will say this. I wanted to properly explain the difference between how Twilight uses the element of magic versus Trixie uses the element of magic before continuing on with the story, because it's actually very important. This version of Twilight doesn't have Spike. Spike works for Zecora, who by extension works for Corona. Twilight doesn't have Celestia, so she doesn't have anyone to at least kind of ground her, to at least have some kind of connection. So she's holed up more and more into her books, and she hears about the element of magic who defeated the tyrant son Corona. Twilight is convinced that the element of magic must belong to this big old powerful unicorn, someone on the level of Star Swirl to be it. This world does kind of roll with the idea that Trixie is tangibly related to Star Swirl to be it. More tangentially, it is, I believe it's like more, not Star Swirl specifically, but more an actual relative of his, and she's kind of like but still technically part of the same family. So there's that. So when Twilight came to Ponyville, she was expecting a very powerful magician. And then she sees Trixie doing what's essentially a magic show. And she feels betrayed. So this is the main difference between Twilight and Trixie in terms of how they incorporate the magic. It's basically Twilight's more powerful, Trixie is much more proficient, because I believe, as I said in the What is the Lunaverse video, Trixie doesn't have a wider range of spells. She has a smaller mana pool. However, Trixie is able to cast the spells that she does know much more efficiently compared to Twilight in the canon, who most of the time really just learns a spell once and then just abandons it. Oh, she learned a new spell? Alright, that's fine. And she can cast more powerful spells more likely because her mana results are just massive compared to normal unicorns. So it's kind of plays with the opposite attracts sort of thing. Twilight has a gigantic mana pool. Trixie has a small mana pool, basically smaller than average, but she's able to work around that by just basically layering everything, can multitask, can even mess up like people like Luna and Celestia with how good her spells, her works of illusion can be, and so she does that. So going back to the story, Twilight and Trixie, they start arguing. Twilight starts arguing on the fact that that's not magic, and she goes, it's like magic is supposed to be like levitating stuff, teleporting, all this jazz. Trixie differentiates, like, no, those are spells. Magic is sleight of hooves. Magic is to a magician. It's basically playing on the fact of what Trixie does compared to what a normal unicorn does. So in canon, Trixie, she's a stage magician. She does all these sleight of hand tricks. She basically, there's nothing up my sleeve sort of thing. And she basically plays with the audience perception of just hiding stuff behind, using machines, using people's eyesights to play tricks on them, keep them distracted while she's doing something else. She does that. And she even uses the hat to hide the magic, to hide her horn in case it's glowing, so that way she has something to do in case she specifically needs it, like lighting up magical fireworks. And they basically start arguing over this idea that spells and magic, if they're the same or they're considered separate, because Twilight just doesn't comprehend the fact that the element of magic is attached to someone who's not powerful, who's not on the level of someone like Luna, who's just wasting her time not really doing spells or not doing magic. Again, Trixie considers that a spell, not magic. So what happens is Trixie basically tricks Twilight into saying something that's very tribalist. So basically, tribalist is basically like pony racism, saying like, you basically trick her in saying that unicorns are better because they have magic. It basically is. Trixie basically tricks Twilight into saying that, Earth ponies and Pegasus don't have magic because that way, in essence, they're inferior to unicorns that way. And she hears it, and some people overhear her. She really doesn't like the fact that she was tricked into saying something tribalist, and so she runs away. All Trixie's friends call her out. However, Twilight takes it differently. Twilight becomes convinced that Trixie's behavior, all this stuff, is an act. So either Trixie's a liar, in essence, she kind of scammed her way into getting the element, or she is powerful, but she's pretending to hide her. She's wearing like weighted clothing. It's like, I only show my true power to people who are worthy, and people and people harass her to see that she's the element of magic. So Twilight goes to the Everfree Forest and finds the Ursa Minor. She basically finds it. She uses a spell to mind control it. However, the spell basically knocks her out, and so the minor basically just wanders into the city and starts destroying it. Everyone starts freaking out. Trixie doesn't know what to do because she doesn't have any spell. She can do like illusion stuff like that, but she doesn't really have anything to handle something as big as an Ursa Minor. She does have like the thundercloud thing, and with a little help from raindrops, she can make it a little bit bigger, but it does nothing against the minor anyway. However, she teams up with Twilight because Twilight wakes up. Twilight inadvertently outs herself as being the one to bring it here, but that's after they take care of the Ursa Minor. Twilight says, I can teleport this thing out of here, but I have to charge it for like a couple minutes. So basically Trixie starts doing all of her illusions, all her glamours, to basically keep the thing, with the help of raindrops, keep the thing distracted. So Twilight can teleport the magic and get the thing out of here. And then of course we find out that Twilight runs away. Twilight brought the thing here. She runs away. Trixie wants to apologize. Finds her. There's a part earlier where she actually goes into the wagon, finds it's literally just covered with books. Even her personal diary is just a bunch of notes. And she's like creeped out about this. Like this is just obsessive. But yeah, the story ends with Twilight coming to the conclusion that Trixie is a fraud, and saying that she doesn't deserve the element of magic. None of her friends deserve the element of harmony, and so we get like some kind of like this spin-off where Twilight finds the elements herself, tries to fashion her own elements. It's kind of weird, and that actually leads into a crossover with like the canon Equestria. So yeah, there's that. So we have fun. So that is the plot, more or less. The characters, there's really only Trixie and Twilight, and I already talked about them in the plot. So there's not much to talk about. Trixie is Trixie, Twilight is Twilight, but you can feel that the roles are reversed, but they still keep their personalities, more or less. Grammar-wise, it's good. Pacing-wise, it's good. I mean, this is a short story. This is based off an actual episode, so there's only so much you can really extend, since it only takes place about, I think the episode only takes place over the course of like 2.5 hours. Not much you can work with, but that's fine. I think the story is good. And yeah, that's a short one. Let me check something. That is why I am doing the little story that takes place during the events of Ghostbusters. Might as well get both of them out of the way. Boast Busted, The Lost Tales by Emerald Bookwise. Oh, come on. It's a short story. And it's not that long. I think it's not that long, but how long is it? So yeah, it's only 3,000 words. It's only 3,000 words. So yeah, that is. So let's get started. See, this takes place before Twilight gets to Twilight. This chapter takes place during when Twilight is making her way through the Everfree Forest to get to the Ursa Minor. And so this kind of makes things better. The crazy little thing called sirens. The early night was dark, and beneath the shadows and twisted gnarled trees of the Everfree Forest, where the stars and moon could not reach, it was even darker. It was through this darkness that crept a signal beacon, a vibrant magenta glow, projected by a unicorn horn at its lavender-coated owner with a slow but deliberate pace through the foliage and underbrush. Every so often, the mare would stop, point her horn forward, and then swing her head from left to right and back again, as though searching out which direction triggered a greater response before resuming a march. Twilight Sparkle was a unicorn on a mission, a quest, a crusade, and somewhere in this forest lay the answer that would solve all her problems. Soon she would be able to prove her worth. Face down this trial and pass the test. Yes, the test. Twilight was good at tests. She never failed, and tonight will be no different. She just had to find a... It was then she heard something and paused briefly, as her ears twitched about, attempting to discern the sound. It wasn't any sound she would have expected from her intended mark, or any other beast of the forest. No, this was something different. Musical. Song-like. Hauntingly beautiful, even. Twilight didn't care. She had only a singular goal on this night. Nothing would distract her, and so she resumed her steady trudge. Yet as she made her way over the muddy and moss-carpeted ground, weaving between trees and ducking branches that tore at her increasingly disheveled blue and purple-striped mane, sound only grew louder and more insistent. She paused, once again lowering her horn, and turning her head to check the path. Well, it's along the same path, she said to herself. No harm in sparing a few moments to investigate while I'm here. As she made her way further along, she could start to make out the words. Lyrics, rather. Something was definitely singing. Please, oh please, don't decline. Come and dance on the river's bed. Well, it wasn't quite singing. Twilight was no musical expert, but she tried to keep herself well read on a wide variety on subject matters. Magic was her talent, her passion, her life, but any good scholar needed to maintain a well-rounded foundation of more general knowledge, to suitably converse with others of high education, if nothing else. No, this wasn't proper song, and not as defined by modern standards at least, more like the steady rhythmic beat of a pre-classical Cavalian chant. Cavalian is basically the Luniverse equivalent to Spain, or Italy, whichever one you want to. She actually preferred as such compared to more contemporary works. Not only was its value of the arts backed by centuries of academic study and acknowledgement, but its evenly measured rhythmic pace was decidedly sensible. Not at all like the blaring, cacophonic gyrations of modern so-called musical artists. Ha! This was proper art! Precise and categorical. Twilight made a mental note that she would try her hoof at writing a Cavalian chant one day. It would be a good meditative exercise. It's supposed to be exercise. To practice between her other studies. Come on in, the water's fine. Please, oh please, don't decline. As she drew closer to the chant source, the lyrics became ever clearer, and Twilight can now make out the sound of running water. A river of some kind? Now that she heard it clearly, she wasn't sure how she had missed it before, and so she also noticed the chant was timely even with the water's steady flow. The two distinct sounds blending into a unified whole. Twilight was actually becoming quite eager to meet whatever talent was behind this masterpiece, and so picked up her pace. She even allowed her original purpose in coming to the forest to slip to the back of the mind. Not forgotten, but less insistent. Come on, dance on the river's bed. Come on in and join the dead. Okay, the last part was a little morbid, she thought to herself as she slowed to a stop. Then again, was a good art supposed to be moody? Were it not so many of the classic epic tales tragedies? Of course, that's all it was. Even in a place as unnatural as the Everfree, full of oh so many monsters, a thing of such refinement couldn't possibly bear any real malice. Besides, even if it did, no mere beast of the night was a match for Twilight Sparkle and her mastery of the arcane arts. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out into the clearing that the river had cut through the forest, calling out hesitantly, "Hello?" All was still and silent for a moment. Before her, Twilight saw a trio of aquatic equines basking in the river cool's water beneath the moonlight. Instead of furry coats, they had scales, and where a pony would have a mane, these creatures instead had fins, with similar fins attached to their forehooves, while their hindquarters seemed to taper off into fish-like tails beneath the water. Although they were each a slightly different shade of green, and other than the fact that one had a stallion-like build, while the other two were more mare-like, their most individual distinguished characteristics were their brightly colored eyes, teal for the first, yellow and red for the other two. The trio made no immediate reply, instead only staring back and forth amongst each other before resuming their chant. Come on in, the water's fine. Please, oh please, don't decline. Come and dance on the river's bed. Come on in and join the dead. Twilight smiled gently. My, that really is a nice chant. A bit dreary, maybe, but poetically insightful. Again, silence was her only response. Then the one with the red eyes turned to her compatriots. Not my fault this time. My harmony has been spun on for weeks. Even if this is another musical pony, our song should work perfectly. Well, if it's not that you, then what is it? Spoke the yellow-eyed creature in a critical tone. Red snapped a harshly defensive reply. How should I know? Maybe you're the one who's screwing up this time. As if, blared Yellow Eyes. You're just trying to make excuses to cover your own shoddy voice work. Pipe down, both of you, the teal-eyed creature interjected as it swam between the two. I got a much simpler way to figure this out. Then turning to Twilight, she gave a shout. Hey! You! Unicorn! So why exactly is our siren song not working on you? Twilight wasn't sure she liked the implications of what the three were discussing, but couldn't resist the urge to show off a bit. Oh, that's easy. I have to be pretty stupid to go hiking someplace as dangerous as the Everfree Forest without casting a few basic protective wards. T.I. gave a satisfied nod and turned back to his compatriots. See, you two? It's no one's fault. This unicorn is just using magic to protect herself. Getting a bit frustrated with having twice now be referred to dismissively as unicorn, Twilight coughed to catch the trio's attention. I have a name. It's Twilight Sparkle and, like we care what our dinner's name is, interrupted Red Eyes, but then paused before continuing. Though I guess with whatever those spells you cast, you're off the menu. Now why don't you just run along so we can get back to our siren song before we starve? And finished with a dismissive wave of finned hoof. Twilight was definitely getting uncomfortable with being treated as a little hunk of meat. With her words in place and the trio waterbound, she knew she was safe enough. Besides, there was something nagging at her that she had to assert. Yeah, about that, actually. If you'll beg my pardon, it's not really accurate to call it a siren song. Now, is it? What do you mean? Said Yellow Eyes with a raised eyebrow and mild irritation at the edge of her voice. Of course it's a siren song. We're sirens, and that's our song. Simple as that. Now, Twilight grinned as she straightened her posture and took a more properly informative tone. See, this is basically Twilight. She's basically more cocky and standoffish. But she's still Twilight. She's still socially awkward and stuff like that. Fits with the tone that Boast is going for. Well, first off, it was more of a chant. Not quite Cavalian, but similar enough. Great, drawled Red Eyes sarcastically. It is another musical pony. Who, me? Came Twilight's somewhat sheepish reply. No, I dabble in a bit of everything. But my real talent is magic. And as if to prove it, she turned slightly to show off her starburst turning mark. What, you mean that freaky tattoo fetish you ponies have is supposed to mean something? Well, it's not a tattoo. They're called cutie marks and... Sorry, Red Eyes interrupted again in a tone that conveyed very much the opposite. Don't care. Now then, since you clearly don't know what you're talking about, why don't you leave it to us professionals to decide whether what we do is chanting or singing? Then gave another dismissive wave. Well, I kind of doubt that any of you have any degree in musical arts, Twilight Grass, but fine. Whatever. Call it singing if that's what makes you happy. The real problem is that you aren't sirens. Tail Eyes' head cocked sideways a bit. Come again? You are not sirens, she repeated with extra emphasis. Oh, great. Now she's a zoologist, read Joan as she rolled her eyes. Probably another ignoramus who thinks we're sea ponies, added Yellow Eyes, now very obviously annoyed and agitated. I'll tell you what we told the last hunter who tried telling us that this here is freshwater, and we're certainly no herbivores. Ignoramus? Nutter? Twilight would show him. She had a point to prove at all. No, of course not. She then proceeded in an excellent lecturous tone. You are most certainly not sea ponies. Or more accurately, you aren't any variety of hippocampus, which would also include more ponies as well. Notably, while aquatic, hippocampus still have the mammalian qualities. Also, while hippocampus do prefer saltwater, they have been known to form freshwater colonies in larger lakes. Don't know where you get your info, lady, quipped Yellow Eyes, but we've seen hippos before. They live down in zebra turning. They're also very dangerous. Oh yeah, during our summer vacation 2 years back, added Red Eyes while licking her lips. Some so good eats felt up for weeks after that. Then she rode back to stroke her belly. That's not what she said, Teal Eyes suggested. She means those pony griffin half-breeds. Some griffin would taste good about now, too, Fred declared with a toothy grin and hunger in her eyes. Well, no, you're all wrong, proclaimed Twilight, then glancing at Red Eyes. Except you. You're just creepy. His conversation was getting decidedly more awkward by the minute, but she couldn't just leave without first enlightening these poor little creatures. First of all, she said, looking at Yellow Eyes, what you were referring to is referred as the hippopotamus. Second, she turned to Teal Eyes. You were talking about hippogriffs. What I said was hippocampus, the technical term for the tribe of aquatic ponies. They all sound the same because hippo is an archaic term meaning horse-like, though it's something of a misnomer in regards to hippopotamus. It's actually kind of funny, seeing as their names mean river horse, which would otherwise been better name for what the three of you. All right, fine, said the yellow-eyed creature as she cut off Twilight bluntly. So what if sea ponies have a fancier name? We all seem to agree that that's not what we're our enemy. Anyway, so if you already know we aren't sea ponies, what makes you certain we aren't sirens? Well, according to historical records, the sirens were three beautiful but dangerous creatures who had the power to charm ponies with their magic. Three of them, three of us. And they charmed through song too. Not seeing the problem, said the teal-eyed creature with bored disinterest. Twilight fixed her gaze firmly on him as she further appended. Yes, but wouldn't that also account for you being male? Right, drawled Yellow Eye sarcastically. The all sirens are girls. Crud. Then we'll dull exasperation. Like we haven't heard that one before. How would breathing even work that way? They don't need to breathe. They were immortals. Well, sort. Okay, so she's actually talking about the Dazzlings from Equestria Girls. That's kind of. So she's actually referencing them. For those who don't know. Well, sort of. It was said that to maintain their power, the sirens had to feed on the negativity and destructs of others. The more of this negative energy they consumed, the stronger their voices became, and the further they could spread their dark magic. Alright, sneered Red Eyes. But if these supposed sirens of yours are so powerful, how come we ain't never heard of them? That was just a double negative, Twilight corrective. Anyway, it's not really surprising you never heard of them before. Their existence largely fitted into myth and legend after they were defeated and banished by Starsteel the Beated over 1,000 years ago. Seemed to me like if all these real sirens who keep blathering around aren't around anymore, there's no reason we can't be the new sirens. Teal Eyes grinned. Then pressed. Besides, if you've never seen them with your own eyes, how can you know they'd ever existed in the first place? Twilight simply beamed with pride as she answered, "Books. Books can be wrong. Books can be wrong." Yellow Eyes jeered in a cheeky tone. Twilight stared in wide-eyed shock, gave a single twitch of her right ear, and then grit her teeth as she issued a deadly rasp. Not my books. She can feel it. An inferno welling up deep inside her. An emotion that threatened to transcend and make itself physically manifest. How easy would it be to just give in to that sensation, or to watch these creatures burn? But no. These are just poor, ignorant souls living in the untamed wilds of the Everfree. They understood not the wretched blasphemy they spoke. And she was Twilight Sparkle. She would not incinerate, no! She would educate. But that storm passed as quickly as it begun, allowing her to regain her composure as though she had never lost it. A single hoof reached absently to stuff out a small frame at one of the frayed tips of her mane. She then proceeded in a chipper tone. I made sure to double and triple check the citation sources for every last book in my collection to ensure authorial accuracy. Alright, Miss Smarty Pants, near the yellow-eyed creatures. If we aren't sirens or sea ponies, then what exactly is it you think we are? Oh, that's easy, came Twilight's matter-of-fact reply. Kelpies. What? Red Eyes barked out with a laugh. Okay, now I know this unicorn side. She thinks we're seaweeds. That's kelp, moron, chatted Yellow Eyes as she mimed slapping her compatriot upside the head. But she's still a loon. Whatever, Red Eyes gulped. As fun as this little chat has been, it's done nothing for my appetite. Now why don't you go back to wherever you came from and leave us to our thing? Actually, I have something to find on the other side of this river. With that, all three sets of eyes lit up with wicked glee as they each flashed a sharp-toothed grin. Well, why didn't you say so in the first place? Said Yellow Eyes eagerly. Yeah, Red Eyes agreed with obvious exuberance. Would have saved us all so much time and effort. Finally, Teal Eyes declared, guess the only thing left for you is to give it a swim. Right, came Twilight's protective response. What kind of fool do you take me for? Red Eyes licked her chops. The kind. I hope. Twilight narrowed her eyes as she gave a harsh but mostly deadpan report. I don't think so. So what then? Quizzed Teal Eyes. Think you can fight your way past us? Might want to reconsider. Yellow Eyes cautioned with obvious fake concern. We kind of got you outnumbered. But please, don't let us talk you out of it, concluded Red Eyes. Oh, I think I'll manage. And with that, the unicorn began to charge her own, its glow increasing from a dull magenta to an almost fiery white. At the same time, the trio began to hum in harmony, as they prepared their own musical magic to counter the unicorn's attack. Both the whites and blacks of their eyes faded away, leaving only the sockets filled with only the solid color orbs that began to faintly glow. The very water about them began to bubble, churning and rise about them, lifting them upwards with it. Tension mounted in the air as both sides seemed to prepare for the inevitable clash, until, with a sudden flash of the light, the unicorn vanished, gone from the sight as though she had never been there to begin with. The trio blinked, their eyes quickly returning to normal, as they ceased their harmony. While the water around them settled back into the river, they looked confusedly between each other. "Hey, where'd she go?" demanded Red Eyes. "Well, it's been fun," came the unicorn's voice, but now from behind. The trio turned, and to their combined utterly disappointment and astonishment, they saw their prey, now safely on the opposite side bank. "But I really do have to get moving." As the pony disappeared between the tree line and into the darkness, the sirens turned to look at each other. "Well, that went swimmingly," growled Yellow Eyes. "So what now?" intoned Red Eyes with more than a bit grumble. "I'm still hungry. Let's go upstream," Teal's Eye suggested. "Let's see if Steven's got any good straps." Red Eyes looked a bit disappointed but conceded. Better than starving." As they swam off, Teal Eyes asked, "So you do actually buy any what Unicorn was saying?" "Heck no," Yellow Eyes trumpeted. "What do ponies know anyway?" "Yeah, they'd be useless," started Red Eyes, who then flashed a razor-edged smile as she finished, but warned her how tasty they are. With that, all three enjoyed a round of shared laughter before swimming in earnest into the night. So that is The Lost Tales, basically, again, what happens between chapter 3 and 4. So that's a good little amendment to end on. I think this story is good. It does add some context to Twilight's character because Twilight, I kind of undersold Twilight's character in the story because if I ever do season 2, Twilight actually becomes the main character, kind of filling in for Starlight. But yeah, I think this story is good enough. Good for what it is. It's fine, just a single grammar error. But yeah, that is Boast Busted and Boast Busted Lost to Tales. I'll see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.